Chapter 10. Riva watched the elevator light and tapped her foot impatiently. Why couldn't this thing move faster? She glanced at her watch. Almost 10. She'd been up in one of the executive offices at Dalby since 9 this morning, working on plans for her scarf show. She was on her way down now to audition the models. Only one day until the first show, she thought, glancing at the elevator light again. Only one, and she had a ton of stuff to do to get ready. But it will be worth it, she promised herself, because Riva Wear will be the hit of the season, and I'll be the hit of the fashion world. The elevator settled to a stop on the main floor. With a smile, Riva swept through the doors and hurried down a hallway, toward the room where the models waited. As she passed an open door, she glanced inside. The tiny, windowless room, usually used for storing boxes and shopping bags, had been cleared out. The two tables, crammed with sewing supplies, stood against one wall, and a long wooden table sat in the middle of the floor. Pam and Willow leaned over the table, unrolling a bolt of black material. Riva frowned. "Don't tell me you're just getting started?" Pam raised her head. "Oh, hi, Riva." "No, we already cut out a bunch of other material." "Good." Riva started to move on. "Riva?" She stopped, tapping her foot again. Pam came around the table. Multicolored thread clung to her hair and pale blue sweatshirt. A yellow tape measure dangled around her neck, and one of her sneakers was untied. Good thing she's working behind the scenes, Riva thought, and her tacky friend, too. Willow wore a skin-tight tank top and black jeans, tucked into scuffed black boots. Riva sniffed. Probably rode to work on her Harley, and was that actually a tattoo on her shoulder? Riva shuddered and turned to Pam. "What is it?" she demanded. "I have a lot to do." "I know, but we have to talk," Pam told her. Sighing loudly, Riva checked her watch. "Make it fast, okay?" "Sure." Pam stuffed her hands into the pockets of her jeans. "We need to set up our business arrangement with you. You know, a contract." "It's really important," Willow chimed in. "So is getting some scarves made, or you won't need any contract," Riva pointed out. "Listen, I'll talk to Daddy's lawyer later today, but right now, I absolutely have to go audition the models. I'll stop by and check on you later." As she turned away, Riva noticed Willow staring at her. Glaring was more like it. Those blue eyes reminded Riva of marbles, hard and cold. What's her problem anyway, she wondered, hurrying down the hall. Doesn't she realize how lucky she is that I'm giving them a chance? "Riva," a voice called out behind her. Riva spun around and smiled as her father walked briskly toward her. "Hi, Daddy. I was just about to audition the models for the Riva Wear show. The Shadyside agency was really excited when I called them this morning. They said they sent over some of their best ones." "That's just what I wanted to talk to you about," Robert Dalby told her. "I know you were planning on hiring 3 models, but it will have to be 2. "But, Daddy, I already worked out the whole routine, and it needs 3 models, Riva protested. 2 won't work at all." "Calm down, honey," her father said. "You can use 3 models, but you can only hire 2 from the agency. Tracy Meacham is already under contract to model for the store, so we have to use her in the show." "Tracy?" Riva practically spat out the name. "Give me a break, Daddy. You know she can't stand me." And the feeling is totally mutual, Riva thought. "No, I didn't know that," her father told her. "What could she possibly have against you?" Riva shrugged, frowning. She and Tracy had had a big blow-up about a guy last year, but she didn't feel like going into the details. "I don't know," she lied. "She's probably just jealous, you know, because you're my father and we have money." "She's never been anything but polite and friendly to me," Mr. Dalby declared. "Don't sound so surprised," Riva told him. "You're the boss, remember? She has to stay on your good side. Anyway, Daddy, I still don't see why I have to use her. I mean, can't you change her contract or something?" Her father laughed. "Easier said than done, honey. In fact, my lawyers would probably tell me it's impossible. No, you have to use Tracy," he insisted. "But—" Mr. Dalby held up his hand. "Riva, this is business, and you might not always like the people you do business with, but you still have to behave like a pro." Riva wasn't in the mood for a lecture. "Okay," she told him. "I understand. I'll use Tracy." Her father patted her shoulder. "I'm off to a meeting now. You go talk to Tracy. She's in the makeup department, modeling a new line of eyeshadow." As her father strode away, Riva heaved a sigh. First Pam and Willow, and now Tracy Meacham. What a bunch of losers. She checked her watch. 10 after 9. The models were waiting. I'm the boss, Riva reminded herself. They can't do anything without me. So let them wait. Go find Tracy and get it over with. Tracy stood at one of the makeup counters. Riva watched her for a few seconds. Slender, with short curly blonde hair and big gray eyes, Tracy sat on a high stool, applying charcoal eyeshadow and chatting with an interested customer. The woman said something, and Tracy laughed, showing deep dimples at the sides of her mouth. Riva frowned. Dimples were too cute. She wanted a more dramatic look for her scarf show, but she didn't have a choice. Annoyed, she cleared her throat loudly. Tracy's makeup hand jumped, and a line of charcoal eyeshadow appeared on her forehead. Sorry, Riva told her with a fake smile, but I need to talk to you for a second, Tracy. Tracy turned to the customer. Excuse me, I'll be right back. She slid from the stool and walked gracefully over to Riva. What? She demanded bluntly. I'm putting together a fashion show for a new line of scarves, Riva told her. The name is Riva Wear. Tracy's eyebrows rose skeptically. When did you go to design school? I have natural talent, Riva shot back. Working with Tracy was going to be a disaster. Anyway, I need 3 models, and you're one of them. Of course, she added snidely, you'll have to wash the eyeshadow off your forehead. Tracy rolled her eyes. Listen, Riva, I know your father is making you use me for this show, she declared. I don't like it any better than you do. You can always refuse, Riva told her. Sure, and lose my job. Tracy's gray eyes flashed. Some of us have to earn our living, you know. Boo-hoo. What am I supposed to do about it? Riva wondered. Feel guilty? So, I'll do this scarf show. And I'll be good in it, Tracy continued. But let's make a deal, okay? You stay out of my way, and I'll stay out of yours. Fine. She's afraid it might get her fired, Riva thought. Good. Just remember who's running the show, Tracy. Smiling sweetly, Riva turned and strode away. At least I'll be able to choose the other 2 models, she thought, hurrying back toward the room where the models waited. Tracy is a blonde, and I definitely want one with black hair. What about the 3rd one? A second blonde might be dramatic, or a second black-haired one. No, that would make Tracy stand out too much. Thinking about the models, Riva turned a corner in the hallway, and stopped short when she saw a familiar face. Daniel Powell stepped in front of her, blocking her path. Surprise, he snapped. What do you want? Riva demanded. What are you doing here? What do I want? Daniel bared his teeth in a cold smile. I want to kill you. Chapter 11. Riva's mouth went dry. Daniel's cold smile faded, his eyes narrowed, and his fists clenched tightly at his sides. He does look like he wants to kill me, Riva thought. But why? Daniel, I don't understand, she cried innocently. What did I ever do to you? Don't tell me you forgot already. Daniel took a step toward her. The other night at your house, the security guard, is it coming back to you now? Oh, that, Riva sighed. But that was just a little joke. Guess what? I'm not laughing, Daniel snarled. You got me into real trouble, in case you're interested. The police treated me like some kind of criminal. They actually thought I was a burglar or something. If my friend hadn't come down to the station to explain who I was, I'd probably be in jail right now. Too bad you're not, Riva thought, but she quickly put on an ashamed expression. Daniel, I'm really sorry, she told him. It was a joke. I never ever meant for something like that to happen to you. It must have been horrible. It wasn't exactly a picnic, he agreed angrily. Riva shook her head sympathetically. I'm so sorry, she repeated. What else did he want her to do? Cry and beg forgiveness? Daniel ran a hand through his sandy hair. Yeah, well, I'm sorry I got so angry just now, he mumbled. I didn't mean to threaten you. I guess I kind of lost it. No kidding. Riva smiled and put her hand on his arm. I don't blame you a bit, she murmured. Maybe we can forget the whole thing, okay? Good idea, he smiled back. Especially since we'll probably be seeing each other a lot. Oh? Riva couldn't imagine what he was talking about. She definitely didn't plan on seeing him again. Yeah. I told you I'm staying in Shadyside for the whole vacation, he reminded her. And guess what? Riva took her hand off his arm. I hate guessing games. Why don't you just tell me? My friend got me a temporary job right here in Dalby's, he announced, in the stockroom. Oh? Does he expect me to do cartwheels? Riva wondered. That's nice. Listen, I have to. So, why don't we put the other night behind us and celebrate? He interrupted. If you're free tonight, we could have dinner, or catch a movie, or both. I don't think so, Riva replied coldly. I'm not allowed to go out with someone who's been arrested. Laughing at her own cruel joke, Riva hurried away, leaving Daniel alone in the hallway. What a nerd. Riva shook her head. College must have done some weird things to my brain. I actually used to think Daniel was interesting. As Riva passed the ladies' room, the door swung open and Grace stepped out. Oh, hi, Riva. I'm glad I found you. Why? Was I lost? Huh? Riva rolled her eyes. A joke, Grace. It was a joke? Oh, well, anyway, I wanted to ask you something. Ask me fast, Riva ordered. I absolutely have to go to the model audition. That's sort of what I wanted to talk to you about, Grace told her. Well, this isn't asking me fast, Grace, Riva snapped. Okay, right. Grace took a deep breath. See, I've always dreamed of being a model, and I was thinking you could use me in a scarf show. It would be so great. Great for you, maybe, Riva thought, but not for the show. She shook her head. Listen, you're thin, but that's about all you have going for you. As a model, I mean. You're too short, for one thing. But... And, Riva interrupted, you don't carry yourself very well. You sort of hunch around like you're scared of your own shadow. No offense, Grace, but you just don't have the training to be a model. Grace's face turned bright red. I know you wouldn't want me to lie to you, Riva told her, forcing a sympathetic smile. It's better not to hang on to a dream that will never come true, right? I'll tell you what, though, you can be my assistant. Sure, I can do that, Grace murmured. Good. Her feelings are hurt, Riva thought. Maybe she'll go home. I wish I'd never invited her. She's no fun at all. I'll meet with you after the audition and give you something to do, okay? Grace bit her lip and nodded. If there's nothing for me to do now, I think I'll take a walk. Whatever. Catch you later. Grace turned and shuffled away, her shoulders slumped. Riva clicked her tongue in annoyance. There goes another loser. I'm surrounded by them. But not for long, she thought as she hurried toward the room where the models waited. Once the Riva wear scarves hit the market, I'll be a winner, and I can leave all the losers behind. Half an hour later, Riva dismissed 9 of the 11 models who had come to the audition. She waited as they filed out of the room, then turned back to the 2 she had chosen. Yes, she had picked the right ones. Liza Grogan, straight, shiny dark hair, big brown eyes, and incredibly long legs. Ellie Stern had short curly red hair, bright blue eyes, and a really sophisticated look. She reminded Riva of herself. I'm definitely giving one of these to my mom for Christmas, Ellie exclaimed, wrapping a red and gold scarf around her neck. They're awesome! Which design school did you go to, Riva? Lisa asked. None, actually. You're kidding. Ellie stared at Riva in surprise. I've seen stuff coming out of design schools that isn't half as good as this. I mean, really, these scarves are fabulous. Thanks. Riva smiled modestly and checked her watch. As soon as Tracy gets here, we'll start rehearsing. Liza frowned. You aren't talking about Tracy Meacham, are you? That's right, Riva told her. She's the 3rd model. She's under contract to Dalby, so... So Riva's stuck with me, Tracy finished, breezing into the room. She paused and stared at Liza, her eyes narrowing. And I guess I'm stuck with you, Liza. Liza gazed back for a moment, then tossed her head and smiled. I guess so, Tracy. Try not to let it ruin your day. Liza and Tracy obviously aren't best friends, Riva thought. But who cares? The only thing that matters is the show. Tracy glanced at Ellie, then back at Riva. Well, I can see why you hired her, Riva. She looks exactly like you. I just hope she doesn't act like you. Ellie looked confused. Riva's not the easiest person to get along with, Tracy told her in a loud whisper. Riva frowned. What happened to staying out of each other's way, Tracy? Wasn't that your idea? Tracy shrugged. I guess I forgot. Well, I hope you haven't forgotten how to model, Riva shot back. If you mess up my show, you're out of it. What will you do? Run and complain to Daddy? Tracy asked with a sneer. I'm under contract, remember? Hey, come on, you two, Ellie pleaded. We all have to work together. Unfortunately, Liza muttered under her breath, glaring at Tracy. Riva took a deep breath. Keep cool, she told herself. Don't let Tracy ruin things for you. The show is too important. Ellie is right, she declared. We all have to work together, so let's get started. Riva pushed open a door at the back of the room and led the models into the showroom. The dress rehearsal is tomorrow, she told them. Right now, we'll just walk through the routine. Workmen had set up a revolving glass door on the stage in front of the room. It opened onto a fake sidewalk that would be lined with mannequins dressed as shoppers. You girls come through the door and walk down the sidewalk in front of the audience, Riva explained. Be sure to swing the scarf over your shoulder so people get a good look at it. Then go back through the revolving door. You want us to walk through together? Tracy asked. Riva gritted her teeth and counted to 10. She hated dealing with stupid people. 1 at a time, she said slowly. You first, Tracy, then Liza, then Ellie. Riva stepped back and watched as the 3 models began to walk through the routine. There would be music during the show, of course, and the words Riva wear at Dalby's in flowing gold script above the glass door. The models would wear black, she decided, so the colorful scars would stand out. It was going to be perfect. Excuse me, a voice whispered from behind her. Riva turned, frowning in annoyance, but her frown disappeared quickly as she gazed at the guy standing near her. Curly dark hair, a strong jaw, golden brown eyes, broad shoulders, a total babe. Hi, she murmured in a throaty voice. Can I help you? I hope so, the guy smiled at her. Is Liza Grogan here? I'm supposed to pick her up. And you are? Oh, her boyfriend, Grant Nichols, he grinned. What about you? I'm Riva Dalby, Riva told him. Dalby, Grant looked impressed. Like in the store. Exactly. I'd like to get to know this guy, Riva decided. She glanced toward the revolving door. Ellie was just pushing through it. Liza couldn't be seen. Good. Listen, Grant, Riva murmured. Liza is working right now. Oh, she got the job? You sound disappointed, Riva remarked. Well, Grant hesitated. No, I'm glad for her, I guess. She's really serious about modeling, but when she gets work, I hardly ever see her. She actually goes to bed at 9. Can you believe it? Even better, Riva thought. Models need a lot of sleep so they look fresh, she told him. I couldn't stand it myself. I'm such a night owl. Me too, Grant replied. He grinned again, as if they shared some kind of secret. Perfect, Riva thought. He's actually coming on to me now. She flicked another glance toward the set. Liza was still out of sight. Now was the time to set something up with Grant. Riva smiled and took a step toward him. The showroom door slammed against the wall. Riva spun around to see the door slammed shut again. Grace burst into the room. Riva frowned. Riva! Grace called hoarsely. She took a step closer. Help me! Riva gasped. Grace's left eye was swollen shut, and blood poured from a wide slash in her bottom lip. Grace took another wobbly step. Help me, please? Then her eyes rolled back in her head, and her knees buckled. Riva screamed in horror as Grace collapsed in a heap on the floor. Chapter 12. Riva rushed across the room and dropped to her knees beside Grace. Behind her, she heard loud gasps from the models. Grant, what happened? Liza cried. I don't know, Grant replied. She just walked in and whomp, she's on the floor. Grace moaned. Her eyelids fluttered. Rory? She muttered hoarsely to Riva. It was Rory? Riva's mind spun. Rory? Here at Dalby's? Loud footsteps pounded across the stage. The 3 models and Grant surrounded Riva and Grace. Shouldn't somebody call an ambulance? Ellie asked nervously. I mean, look at her face. Grace shook her head and grasped Riva's wrist with cold fingers. No ambulance, she pleaded. Please, just let me rest a second. Riva glanced up at the others. You might as well go, she told them. I'll take care of her. See you tomorrow morning at rehearsal, 9 sharp. As they left, Riva shot Grant a private smile. Then she turned back to Grace. Carefully, she helped her roommate to her feet and guided her down the hall to the ladies' room. Grace sat down shakily on a padded bench while Riva dampened some paper towels at one of the sinks. What happened? Riva asked, wringing out the towels. I took a walk down Division Street. He must have followed me, Grace replied. But I never saw him. Anyway, I was almost back when he dragged me into one of the loading bays behind the store, and he hit me." She broke off, shuddering. Reva handed her the towels. "We have to tell the police." "No," Grace winced as she dabbed at her lip. "But look what he did to you," Reva argued. "You can't let him get away with it." Grace shook her head. "I don't think he'll bother me again." "You call a split lip and a black eye bothering you?" Reva cried. "Don't be a wimp about this, Grace. You have to put that psycho away." "You don't understand," Grace told her. "I know Rory. He wanted revenge and he got it. He'll go away now." Reva rolled her eyes. If that's what Grace thinks, fine. It is her problem. She can handle it herself. "Listen," Reva said. "I still have tons of stuff to do for my Reva Wear show." "Yeah, I know how important it is to you." Grace smiled with one side of her mouth. "Go do what you have to do. Don't worry about me." "Okay," Reva thought. She glanced in a mirror and began fluffing her hair. As she did, the bathroom door opened and Willow stepped inside. Her eyes met Reva's in the mirror. Willow's expression was cold and unblinking. If looks could kill, I'd be dead, Reva thought in amusement. Grant Nichols took a long, shaky breath as Reva wrapped her arms around his neck. "I don't believe I'm doing this," he told her. "Believe it!" Reva ran her fingers through his curly black hair and kissed his lips. "See?" she murmured. "It's really happening." Grant kissed her back, then pulled away and glanced around Pete's Pizza. "I know it's real," he said. "That's the problem. If Liza ever found out." "Hey!" Reva put her fingers against his mouth. "Who's Liza?" She kissed him again, then leaned her head on his shoulder and smiled to herself. Grant had called her late that afternoon, asking if she wanted to go out. No big surprise. She knew he was interested. She'd felt that spark the minute he set eyes on her. She agreed to go out, of course. She was attracted to Grant, and she didn't mind taking something away from Liza. That made it all the more interesting. Now the two of them sat in a back booth, waiting for their pizza to arrive. Grant rubbed his chin against the top of Reva's head. "How's your friend?" he asked. "The one with the black eye." "She's okay." Reva snuggled against him. Grace was a pain, actually. "Let's not talk about that. It was so unpleasant." "Talk about unpleasant. I couldn't believe it when I saw Liza and Tracy in the same room together," Grant said. "I'm surprised they weren't tearing each other apart. They hate each other, you know." "No, I didn't," Reva rolled her eyes. "Who cared about Tracy and Liza?" "Yeah, it's really bad news," Grant continued. "Tracy accused Liza of stealing 2 modeling jobs from her. Plus, I used to go out with Tracy. So she thinks Liza stole me away too." So what? Reva thought. It didn't have anything to do with her. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. Grant tightened his arm around her shoulders. "I think you should be careful, that's all. When I said they hate each other, I wasn't kidding. Liza is not happy about working with Tracy in your show, and I'm sure Tracy is not exactly thrilled either. There could be fireworks, so watch out." "Hey!" Turning in the booth, Reva put her arms around Grant's neck again. "Enough talk about Liza and Tracy," she murmured softly, moving her lips to his. "It's not my problem, is it?" At 8:45 the next morning, Reva strode down the hall to the showroom humming to herself. She felt great. She had a fashion show to put on and a handsome guy to play with. What more could anybody ask for? The scarves would be a major hit. She could feel it. And last night had been fun. Grant worried too much about Liza, but Reva knew she could make him forget. He's definitely cute, she thought. Maybe I'll keep him around for a while. Still humming, Reva pushed open the door and flipped on the light. Good. The workman had set up the mannequins along the fake sidewalk. Reva tossed her blue down jacket onto a chair and put her hands on her hips, studying the mannequins. Right now, they wore a mixture of clothes, coats, nightgowns, ski outfits. Reva frowned, thinking. She wanted them to look like shoppers hurrying into Dalby's, but she didn't want them to be dressed too colorfully. The audience should pay attention to the scarves and nothing else. Dark clothes, she decided. Blue, black, dark green. Maybe at the end of the show, each of the live models could drape a scarf around one of the mannequins. Reva smiled. She definitely had a talent for this kind of thing. As she walked down the aisle toward the mannequins, Reva noticed that one of them looked out of place. It stood in a weird position, tilted on a support pole with its knees bent. If it's damaged, she thought, heads will roll. Daddy pays these workmen good money. They should be able to handle a mannequin without breaking it. Annoyed, she strode to the mannequin to see what was wrong. She grabbed hold of the silvery gray jacket and spun it toward her. The mannequin swung around. Its head lolled to one side, revealing part of a red scarf wrapped tightly around its neck. Riva touched the ends of the scarf. It felt like one of Pam's. Wasn't that a gold snowflake painted on it? Definitely one of the Riva wear scarves. It's ruined now, Riva thought, seeing how tightly it had been twisted. Her gaze traveled up to the mannequin's face. A blonde curl drooped over its forehead. Riva snatched her hand away and stumbled backwards. No. Oh no. Not a mannequin. Tracy. Oh no. Tracy Meacham. Riva stared in horror at the bulging eyes, at the red scarf, knotted so tightly around Tracy's throat, at the open mouth, gaping open forever in a silent scream of agony. Part 2. Chapter 13. Riva clamped her hands over her mouth, trying not to be sick. She's dead, her mind screamed. Tracy is dead. Strangled. Riva took another step backward. Her knees shook so badly she thought she might fall. As she tried to catch her balance, she felt something sticky under her shoes. She glanced down. A pool of blood had formed around Tracy's feet. Dark red blood, spreading out in a circle. Riva clamped her hands tighter against her mouth and closed her eyes. I'm stepping in it, stepping in her blood. Then she opened her eyes. Blood? But where did it come from? Tracy had been strangled, right? Where did all the blood come from? Shaking all over, Riva examined Tracy's body and saw the support pole. The pole that held up a mannequin, jammed through Tracy's back. Someone had murdered Tracy, strangled her, then hung her from the pole like a plastic mannequin. But who? And why? As Riva watched, a trickle of blood wormed its way down the fold of Tracy's jacket. It gathered into a red drop, hung on the hem for a second, then broke free and splashed to the floor. Riva tore her hands away from her mouth and screamed. It must have been so awful for you, Riva. Ellie tucked a curly strand of red hair behind her ear and peered at Riva with a worried expression. Are you sure you're okay? Maybe you should go home. She can't, Liza pointed out. The police want to talk to her, remember? They want to talk to all of us. She sighed. I wish they'd hurry up about it. Riva gazed around the big showroom. Tracy's body was gone, but the pool of caked blood remained. She glanced away, shuddering. I still can't believe it, Ellie murmured. When Liza and I heard you scream, we knew something terrible had happened. But I never thought... She swallowed hard. Who hated Tracy enough to kill her? Remembering Grant's words from last night, Riva stared at Liza. The dark-haired model sat with her arms folded and her legs crossed, one foot swinging back and forth. She looked worried and impatient. But she didn't look guilty. Of course, she might be a great actress, Riva thought. She picked up a cup of coffee and glanced into it. The stuff had turned to sludge. She set it back down. In the front of the room, the police were still busy taking photographs, dusting things for fingerprints, talking to each other in low voices. Riva glanced at her watch. 2 o'clock already. If only her father weren't at that stupid all-day business meeting, he'd make the police let her go. She'd already told them everything she knew. She jumped from the chair and began pacing. First, she wanted to go home and soak in a hot tub. And then she needed to check her list of models and find a replacement for Tracy. She just hoped her father didn't decide to cancel the whole thing. What about the show? Liza asked, as if she had read Riva's mind. Is it still on? Ellie gasped. How can you talk about the show when Tracy has been murdered? Sorry, but it's how I make a living, Liza told her. If it's off, then I have to start looking for other work. What about it, Riva? I'm not sure yet, Riva replied. I really can't think about it now. Actually, she cared about the show as much as Liza did. More, probably. But why admit it? She didn't want to look completely heartless. At least, not while the police were still around. Call me as soon as you can, will you? Liza asked. I need to know. She glanced toward the group of police and shivered. I really do feel bad about Tracy, even though it didn't like her. I wish Grant were here. Me too, Riva thought. Miss Dalby, A detective named Blake strode up. Just a couple of questions, and then you can go. Finally, Riva thought. Blake waved Liza and Ellie away, then turned to Riva. I hope you understand. We have to talk to everybody who saw Miss Meacham yesterday. Yes, but I already told you everything I know, Riva said. At least 10 times, she added silently. Blake ran a hand over his balding head. We're trying to get a picture of her last day. The last time I saw her alive was yesterday in here, Riva replied. I'm staging a fashion show, and Tracy was one of the models? And she didn't tell you what her plans were for the rest of the day. Hardly. No, she didn't. Did she seem upset or worried? Anything like that? Only upset because she had to work with me, Riva thought. She shook her head. And I just don't have any idea who'd want to kill her. Riva glanced over at Liza and remembered again Grant telling her how much Liza hated Tracy. There could be fireworks, he had warned. Should she tell Detective Blake? No, not now anyway. Grant couldn't possibly have meant anything like murder when he said that, and besides, Riva needed Liza for the show. Riva made a point of looking at her watch, hoping the officer would take the hint. 2:15. She'd scream if she didn't get out of here soon. All right, Miss Dalby. Thanks for your time, Blake told her. If you think of anything, be sure to get in touch. Of course. Riva grabbed her jacket and bag and hurried out of the room before the detective could think of anything else to ask her. As she stepped into the hallway, Grant's words came back to her again. Liza and Tracy really hate each other. There could be fireworks. Forget it for now, Riva told herself. She zipped her jacket and hurried down the hallway. You have a show to put on. If Liza had anything to do with Tracy's murder, let the police figure it out. After all, that's their job. Oh no, Riva groaned as she pulled her car to a stop in front of her house. The battered, rusty VW sat in the driveway, looking like a junkyard reject. Groaning again, Riva stared at the front door. Pam and Willow must be inside. Why did they have to show up now when she was so tired and upset? The last thing she wanted to do was talk to Pam and her creepy, mean-eyed friend. Maybe I can sneak past them, she thought, climbing out of the Miata. They're probably in the living room again. All I have to do is make it up the stairs without them seeing me. Carefully, Riva slid her key into the front door lock. She turned the handle silently, eased the door open, and peered inside. The foyer was empty. So far, so good. Staying on tiptoe, she took one step, then another. Something moved behind the door. Riva started to turn. Too late. A hand came out of the shadows. Something glinted in a dim light. A knife. A gleaming, sharp-bladed knife. Before Riva could open her mouth to scream, the knife plunged deep into her back.